We want to welcome you to the Dallas Independent School District's STEM Environmental Education Center virtual field trip. We want to say a very special welcome to Marsalis, Lee McShann, William Anderson, B.H. Macon, W.W. Bushman, Bales, Arturo Salazar, Pleasant Grove, Julius Dorsey, Alex Sanger, William Lipscomb, Lakewood Elementary, Martha Turner Riley, and John Quincy Adams. Thank you so much for joining us today in this fall afternoon. Teachers, if you're watching and you're not signed up, please do so. Go to www.tiny.cc/PK-2 registration and sign up for us, please. We need like for you to be included. The program today will be properties of rocks. During this virtual field trip, students will observe and describe rocks by size, shape, color, and texture. Students will also give examples of the way that rocks are useful. Mr. Dominguez will tell us all about the different types of rocks, color and texture by Ms. Ramirez. Ms. Schramm will cover size and shape, and Mr. Monroe will tell us how rocks are useful. You cannot ask us a verbal question, but you can go to www.tiny.cc/question-answer and send us a question in, and we will answer it either during the program or I'll send it to your teacher and they can answer it with you. Now, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and Mr. Dominguez is going to tell us all about the different types of rocks.
Hola amigos, en esta parte de su paseo virtual vamos a explorar la Tierra. Vamos a responder la pregunta ¿qué es la Tierra? Vamos a ver qué animales podemos encontrar viviendo no solamente arriba de la Tierra, pero también adentro de la Tierra. Y también les voy a enseñar 3 diferentes tipos de rocas y vamos a explorar las características de cada roca. Alright guys, so in this part of your virtual field trip, we are going to be talking about soil. So we're going to answer the question, what is soil? And we're also going to see what animals we can find not only living on top of the soil, but in the soil. And I have 3 rocks to show you guys, and we are going to explore the characteristics of each one of those rocks. So guys, let's get started. Okay amigos, la primera cosa que voy a hacer es agarrar un poquito de tierra para poder examinar los contenidos y para poder responder a la pregunta ¿qué es la tierra? All right, friends, so the first thing I'm going to do is grab a sample of soil so we can answer that first question. What is soil? So we're going to examine the contents of the soil to figure that out. So let's grab our sample. And we're also going to see if we can find any interesting animals living in the soil. También vamos a ver si podemos encontrar algunos animales interesantes viviendo en esta tierra. Y vamos a usar una lupa para examinar la tierra. So we're going to use a magnifying glass to examine this dirt. So we're going to take this dirt inside so we can do that. Vamos a llevar esta tierra adentro para poder examinarla más bien. Pero vamos a agarrar un poquito más y a ver qué podemos encontrar. Ya miro unas raíces. La tierra es muy importante para las plantas, ¿verdad? Ok, amigos, ya estoy adentro y para que no se me escape nada, voy a poner los contenidos de mi tierra aquí adentro de esta otra caja de plástico y vamos a ver qué podemos encontrar. Alright guys, so I'm back inside, and so nothing escapes. What I am going to do is I am going to put the contents of my dirt, of my soil, inside this plastic container. So let's see what we can find, okay? And remember, we are going to use my magnifying glass to see what we can find living or non-living, okay? So let's get started and let me give you guys a better view of what we find. Ok amigos, vamos a explorar ¿Qué podemos encontrar en nuestra tierra? All right, friends, let's see what soil is made out of. Let's see what we can find in soil. Ok, amigos, vamos a ver qué podemos encontrar en nuestra tierra. All right, friends, so let's see what we can find in our soil. So I already see some pretty interesting things, and you guys are probably seeing what I'm seeing, and I see some worms. Miro unos gusanos. ¿Los miran? Y estos son los gusanos que uso para comida para mis gallinas. So these are actually some of the worms that I use to feed some of my chickens. So they live in the soil, well, the ones that got away. So these are pretty cool. ¿Qué más miro? Miro parte de un árbol, una hoja, ¿verdad? So I see part of a tree. So a leaf, right? So I see some non-living things. I see a rock. Miro una roca. Una roca no está viva, ¿verdad? ¿Qué más puedo mirar? So what else do I see? Miro lodo. So I see some mud. And it looks like there's some sand in this mud. Se mira como arena en este lodo. Let's see what else. Oh, mira lo que tenemos aquí. Tenemos un insecto. Hay muchas cosas vivas que viven en la tierra, ¿verdad? So I see a insect. There's lots of living things in our dirt, in our soil. So let's see what else I can find. So I have some wood. It might have been from a tree or maybe from something else, but that doesn't look like bark to me. Let's see, what else do we have? We have some more rocks. These rocks are a little bit different in color. They're more white in color. And we'll talk about rocks in a little bit. Encontré otras rocas que se miran un poquito diferente en color, ¿verdad? Son blancas. Y vamos a hablar de rocas un poquito más en un momento. Lo que estoy mirando es que la tierra está hecha de cosas que son vivas y no vivas. De roca, de arena, de hojas, de lodo, de arena. Muchas cosas diferentes, ¿verdad? Entonces pienso que podemos decir que la tierra consiste de una mezcla de cosas vivas y no vivas. De cosas como arena, de cosas como lodo, de rocas, de cosas vivas como insectos, gusanos. So I think it's safe to say that soil is made out of both living and non-living things. All right, guys, before you go today, I wanted to talk some more about rocks. And we already know that rocks are an important part of soil, but I wanted to talk some more about their individual characteristics. And there's all types of rocks. So the first characteristic that I want to talk about is color. Do you guys see different colors? I do. I see gray, I see some black, some red, some pink, some white. So there's some black rocks right there, and some brown. So rocks come in all different colors. Now, another characteristic that we can talk about is texture. Now, what is that big word, texture? Well, texture just describes what something feels like. Now, just by looking at this rock, what do you think it feels like? Well, I'll tell you, it feels very bumpy. It's very rough. So if you were to fall on this rock, you would probably get a bunch of scratches. We don't want that. Now, this rock over here feels very smooth, but it's very sharp. So don't cut yourself with this rock. This rock is actually one of my favorite rocks. It's called obsidian. So now, Another way that we can tell rocks apart, or another important characteristic of rocks, is how heavy they feel or their weight. Now, this rock feels pretty heavy. And even though this rock looks pretty big, it's actually very light. Now, this rock is called pumice, and it's actually a very light rock. So rocks come in different weights. Now, the last characteristic that I want to talk about is how hard these rocks can be. Now, this rock, even though it looks pretty hard, it's actually not. In fact, check this out. What did I just do? I just broke it. This rock is very brittle. Now, I wonder if I can do the same thing with this rock. Let's see. Nope. This is a very hard rock, so I can't break it. This one is very brittle, which means I can break it pretty easily. So some rocks are hard, some rocks are very brittle. Now, the last rock I want to show you guys is pretty special because check it out. What does it have? It's a fossil. So sometimes you get lucky and you find some fossils in rock. All right, guys, I hope that you guys learned a little something about rocks and soil today. I hope you enjoyed this part of your virtual field trip. I will see you guys next time.
Thank you, Mr. Dominguez. We had a question. What type of rock are fossils found in? Most fossils are found in sedimentary rocks because the fossils are not destroyed by high temperatures and high pressure like some of the other rocks. Igneous rocks form under conditions too hot for life forms. A limestone and shale are the softer sedimentary rocks, and they tend to have very good fossils in them. And now, Ms. Ramirez is going to tell us about color and texture of rocks.
Hello, my name is Ms. Ramirez, and in this segment, we're learning about the color and texture of rocks. And before we get started, I do have an animal friend that I'm going to introduce you guys to. I'm going to give you some clues to who this animal is, and then I'll let you guys guess. So if you've been with us before, you've probably met this animal. This animal has 4 legs, a long tail, a beard of skin under his chin, and he depends on rocks for camouflage. That means that this animal can blend in really well with the rocks and the sand in which they live. So this animal originally comes from a desert. And here's an example of the color of this animal. Here's a sandstone rock. It is made out of sand. So all these little particles of sand can come together to create a rock. So this animal is almost the same color as these 2 materials. So go ahead and make your guess what animal you think this is, and I'll go pull him out. If you guys guessed a lizard, you would be right. This is Spike, the bearded dragon. Again, he gets that name because he has the beard of skin under his chin that he can make really big when he gets scared. Now look at the color. What color is he? So notice he's almost the same color as this rock. So he is sort of like a light brown or tan. So he's almost the same color as this sandstone rock. So rocks can be very important for animals to help them hide. So I'm going to go ahead and put my animal friend up, and we'll look at some other examples of rocks and their colors. So for color, we're using our eyes to help us learn the color of our rocks today. Rocks can be a variety of different colors. They can be black and red and brown, even green and blue. So be thinking about colors when we look at our rocks today. And we're also going to be talking about texture. Texture means how does something feel when we touch it? So we're going to be using our hands to help us determine texture. So when you touch it, is it bumpy or rough or smooth or soft? So be thinking about those words. And today, not only are we learning about rocks, but we're also learning about something called minerals. And all a mineral is minerals are super tiny things that make up a rock. So today, we're going to be looking at rocks and minerals, the tiny stuff that makes up a rock. So for example, I have a cool looking mineral here. This is quartz, and it's a pretty sparkly mineral. a lot of our rocks actually have quartz in them. And this is one of my favorites. This is rainbow quartz. Notice those pretty colors. What colors can you guys see inside this quartz? So that's a mineral. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys and we'll look at some other pictures of rocks and minerals. So let me get that screen share started. So today we're learning about color and texture. So remember texture, we use our hands. It tells us how does something feel? Is the rock going to be bumpy, soft, furry, scratchy, rough, or fuzzy? And color, we're using our eyes. So again, color words, you guys can pause the video to remind yourself of some of those color words, but here's an example of some of those colors we might see today. So in our next slide, we're going to be looking at some birthstones. A birthstone is simply a special mineral that is cut and polished to make it look really pretty for jewelry. Now, these birthstones, they're just rocks and minerals that represent the month you were born. So look at some of these pictures. What are some colors that you see? And see if you can find the month you were born. So teachers, feel free to pause the video to allow students to have time to find their month and see if they can tell what color rock or mineral represents their birthday. Now I'm going to go ahead and do November because we are in the month of November. So if you were born in November, a big happy birthday to you. Your birthstone is a type of mineral called citrine. And what color is citrine? It's a beautiful orange color. Now, my birthday is actually in June. And if we look over here on our chart, the birthstone for June is called a moonstone. And it's almost like a white or clear color. So again, take a look at the cool colors of some of those rocks and minerals. And now here's a couple of pictures of rocks and minerals from my collection. This is one of my favorites. It's called Peacock Chalcopyrite. So feel free to see if you can name some of the colors that you see in the picture. This is a mineral. Remember, minerals make up rocks. This is a mineral that gets its name because it looks like this pretty bird here. This is a peacock and it's a colorful bird. So this rock has colors very similar to this bird. It has colors of, let's see if I can pull my colors up. We have purple, we have blue, there's some green, and there's also gold. So this rock is very colorful. And if you guys were to touch it, it feels really bumpy. So here's our next rock. This is called agate. What are some colors that you guys see in this rock? Agate is made out of two different minerals. Again, remember, rocks are made out of smaller stuff called minerals. And some of the colors that I see, there's a lot of red. We also have a big chunk of black, and we have some orange over here on the bottom. Now, if you guys were to touch this rock, I would say it feels kind of jagged and rough. So if you look at the edges, these are jagged edges. They're kind of sharp and pointy. And our next rock, see if you guys can tell me what colors you see, or if you can describe what it looks like. This was a rock that I found outside, and right away I noticed that this rock actually has lines or stripes on it. Sometimes you might find rocks that have spots or stripes or different colors and patterns. This rock happens to have some blue in it. It also has gray, and it is striped. Now, something interesting about this rock, when I touched it, it was actually really smooth. So if you touch your desk is probably smooth. Or if you've ever touched an apple, the apple is also smooth. So not all rocks are rough and bumpy. Some can be smooth. Here's my last one. This is a cool mineral called sulfur, and it is bright yellow. So again, rocks and minerals come in all sorts of different colors. And when I touched this rock, it was really bumpy, almost like the little spiky ball you see in the picture. Now here's a rock collection that I have here at the Environmental Center. Teachers, you guys can actually request to rent out one of these collections. And take a moment to pause and see what are some colors that you see and how do you think some of these rocks might feel? Also think about which one is your favorite. I know my favorite is this yellow sulfur one because it's bright yellow. And I have a challenge for you guys. Go outside and see if you can find two rocks. See if you can tell me the color of your rock and the texture of your rock. So how does it feel? So I'm gonna stop my screen share and then just really quickly, I have a couple of rocks to show you. This one is a cool rock I found outside. It's black and white and has stripes on it. This one is a rock I found in a creek. So the water was running over it and it made it super smooth. So go outside and see what kind of rocks you can find. I'm gonna give it back to Mr. Gorman to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. And a student asked, why are some rocks red? The rust-colored grains within rock likely contain minerals made up of iron and oxygen called iron oxides. When sedimentary rock has a reddish color, it often indicates that the sediment was exposed to oxygen in the atmosphere before or during burial. Now, Ms. Schramm is going to tell you about size and shapes of rocks.
Hello friends, it's Miss Schramm. And like Dr. Gorman said, I am talking all about size and shapes of rocks. So let me get this going. All right, children. At the end of my section, you'll be able to observe, describe, and sort rocks from size and shape. So rocks come in all different sizes. They can be teeny, tiny, tiny. They can be small, they can be big, or they can be huge. So if you look at these little pictures, the first one is a teeny tiny little pebble. Then we've got some bigger stones. She can fit 3 in her hands. Then there's a big one that you couldn't even move, it's so big. And then that last picture is huge. You can see if you look really close, that little person is standing underneath the edge of that boulder. And that is a really huge rock. We are not going to see any huge rocks today, probably not even ones that are too big because we're inside my classroom. But we will also see rocks that come in all different shapes. So some rocks can be round, some can have square shapes, some are long and rectangular. And then sometimes if you're really lucky on a rock hunt, you can find one that's heart-shaped. Those are very rare because most rocks don't have a defined shape. So most of these rocks you can see from these pictures, they have kind of funky edges, jagged edges. They don't have really a defined shape. And that's most common. So let's look at some of my rock collection here. So I'm gonna scoot you, so you can see. And we're gonna sort some of my rocks by size. So I'll let you see my work table so you know what's going on. And we are gonna sort from smallest to largest. That means the littlest one and the biggest one. And then mediums go in the middle, right? So it's just like a number line, smallest to largest. So I'm going to see this little rock. This little rock is not too big, but I know I have one smaller. So I'm gonna put it right here to start. Then I'm gonna grab another rock. This rock is a little piece of sandstone. And I know it's definitely bigger than that rock. And I think I'm gonna put it towards the larger side because it's pretty big, well, compared to my paper. All right, let's see. I've got another one. This is hematite. It's very beautiful. It's very sparkly. Let's see. Well, it's bigger than this one. And it's smaller than that one. So I'm going to put it about right here. Somewhere in the middle of those two. Because it's not as small and it's not as big. Now, I've got these teeny tiny pebbles. Just like the one in the picture. And these are like the kind of pebbles that I put in the bottom of my fish tanks here. So I'm just gonna take one. Let's see if I can find the smallest one. It's so little. Okay, I'm gonna put him at the very edge. Maybe I'll toss in another one too, because that's a little bigger. So we got 2 little pebbles that are my smallest in my collection. Then let's see what else I have. I have this pumice stone, which is really light. And let's see, this one, well, it's bigger than that, and it's not as big as this one. So I'm gonna scoot the hematite over and make room for pumice. All right, that's where he's gonna go. And then I have one more rock in my size, and woof, this rock is much bigger. I don't even really have to compare it. This one I know is much bigger. So that one is the largest. So we got smallest to largest. And these ones are kind of medium, right? Boom, simple as that. So my challenge to you is if you go on a rock hunt later, maybe at recess or at home, or maybe sometime this weekend, you can sort your rocks from smallest to largest too. All right, let's see what we got cooking next. Now we're not just focusing just on size, we also want to focus on shape. So I talked about how most rocks are undefined shape. They're kind of jagged, they're kind of wonky. They don't really fit into any particular category. So I have this bottom corner is going to be for undefined shape. But my rock collection has a few shapes that I do see. So sometimes they're round, sometimes they're rectangular, and some of them are triangular. So they look like a little triangle. So let's kind of see what I'm talking about. So the first one is obsidian. So this one is so super cool, black and shiny and so smooth. But if you look at the edges, it doesn't really follow any rules for any of our main shapes. So I'm going to put that one in undefined. It's got some straight edges, but it's kind of all over the place. Then I'm going to look at another rock. I believe this is another piece of sandstone like we saw before. But look at how this one is. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 straight sides. That's a rectangle. So I'm going to put that one in the rectangular shape. Let's see, what else? Here's a little one. And if you look at this one, it looks like a little triangle. It's got 1, 2, 3 sides. So I'm going to stick that in the triangular section. And remember, it's not perfect because these are rocks from nature, but it's fun to look for patterns. Then I'm going to look at this one, my amethyst. It is so beautiful up close, and it's purple and shiny. But once again, it's got those kind of jagged edges. I don't really know what shape. So I'm going to put that in undefined. Then I've got this one. This stone is round, and it looks like it was probably in a river because it's round and smooth and it rolls. So that means it is round. Let's see. I've got a few more. Here's one, and it looks like it has 1, 2, 3 sides again. I think that one's kind of triangular. Then I've got a piece of quartz. And this one again looks like a rectangle to me because I see 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So I'm going to put that in rectangle. And then I've got this one. Now this one is kind of round on this end, but it's kind of straight on this end. So I'm going to put that in the undefined section because it doesn't follow any rules for a perfect shape. So as you can see, rocks come in all different shapes and sizes. So I want to show you a few special rocks that I have. I have this rock that usually lives in a fish tank. See, it's got some algae in there. And this rock is super cool because it has almost a perfect hole, a little tunnel in there. And the way that happens is from weathering. So over time, rain, moving water, wind makes rocks round or can round out holes. So maybe what happened is a smaller rock was in there and swirl around, and it kind of made like a little pothole over time. So from weathering, it can smooth out rocks and change the shape, and it can change the size of the rocks. So I have that. And also humans can change the size and shape of rocks. These rocks have little fossils in them, or they were just little pretties, and they were bought from a rock shop. So these ones are polished and kind of shaved down, especially this one you can see from its original side to the side we see now. It's been polished and shaved down so it looks like a specific shape. They kind of change the texture and the size of that rock for decoration. And I have this big, humongous, heavy rock, and it looks so boring on this side. But if you look at it on the inside, it's a geode. So it's got cool, sparklies on the inside. All right, my last little thing is I have a living friend that I want to show you. And he depends on rocks in his environment to kind of blend in. So this little guy has a shell, and he lives in the mud of freshwater ponds, rivers, lakes. He is a mud turtle. So my little mud turtle, he's very shy right now, but that's perfect because he's in disguise. If I hold him next to this rock and I was a predator, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. He looks just like that rock because of his size and shape. So he is able to use his shell to camouflage in the river in his environment. So when he's living up amongst the mud and the muck and the rocks, it's hard to tell him apart from the stones nearby him. All right, so he is a little grouchy. He wants to go back in the water, and you've got more to learn. So I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Schramm. Very interesting. Okay, the question came in. What are the small pieces of stone that's used for making paths and roads? What are they called? Okay, they can be many different kinds of rocks. And what they're actually called is gravel. Now, I have gravel in my flower beds. It's decomposed granite. And that is what my wife wanted. And so I get to get out there and take a shovel and scatter it out, not really a path, but just a bedding for my flowers. So small stones you see are gravel. Now, my grandfather a long time ago used to drive a gravel truck, and they called it pea gravel. And I wasn't real sure about the name. So one day I asked him, and he says, oh, it's about the size of a pea. So that's what the small stones that you see. They can be many different kinds of rocks, but they're called gravel just because of their size. And now Mr. Monroe is going to tell you about how we use rocks.
Hey, good afternoon, students. My name is Mr. Monroe, and we're going to talk about the usefulness of rocks. Boy, they are really important. Ooh-wee, I bet you guys are not going to believe what I'm going to tell you next. In fact, when I first heard it, I didn't believe it. Do you know that for each person in the world today, each of us, we are responsible for using 20,000 pounds of rock every year? Boy, that's amazing, isn't it? Well, when you think about it, and you really look at some of the ways that we use rock, I began to believe it. In fact, if I was with you right now, I would ask all of you who brushed your teeth this morning to raise your hand. Of course, I would throw my hand up, and then I would remind you that this morning, when you put that toothpaste on your toothbrush, guess what? You were using something that came from a rock. You see, rocks are made out of what we call minerals. Sometimes the rocks are ground up into a powder substance. Sometimes they're heated up to get the minerals out of them. Different processes get the minerals out of the rocks that we use in our everyday lives. One of the things I want you to remember today is at least remember some of the things that are products of rocks that we use in our everyday lives. Your teacher may ask you about that later on. Also, I want you to remember some of the things that animals use rocks for. And of course, you've already heard Miss Schramm talk about the mud turtle, right? So guys, let's get started. Well, if you look at the contents of what toothpaste is, you will see fluoride. Well, guess what? This little purple crystal right here that you're looking at, that is the mineral fluoride. So it is ground up and it is put in through a treatment in the toothpaste that helps protect your teeth as you brush them and to clean them. You know, it even goes back further than that. When you were first born and you didn't wear clothes, the first type of clothing you wore was a diaper. And sometimes that diaper would get wet when you had an accident. Well, after your parents dried you off, they put something on your bottom called baby powder. If you look at the ingredients of baby powder, somewhere it's going to say talc. Well, guess where that talc came from? It came from a rock that looks just like this. Very smooth. It has a different feeling. And so what they do, they grind this up into a powder form, and that's what baby powder is made of. And then they put a little fragrance in it to make it smell pretty good. And you know, I can remember when I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and the teacher would have us doing math problems on a blackboard. Well, we would go up to the blackboard, and the blackboard was made out of a product of rock. In fact, it was made out of rock. It was made out of black slate, just like I'm holding right here. And the chalk that we used to write on that board was made from dolomite limestone, which is a rock that looks like this. Of course, the chalk looked like this. So let's see if it will write on it. Sure enough, it wrote on that piece of slate. And as far as jewelry, I've got a ring on that's made out of gold. Where did that gold come from? Well, it came from a rock that looks similar to this. Now, this is not real gold. This is something called iron pyrite. Another name given to it, it is called fool's gold because it fooled a lot of people a long time ago. When people were looking for gold, they would find this rock instead, and they got all excited, thought they had hit it rich. And then when they had it tested, they found out it was only fool's gold. And they were quite disappointed. You know, we use rocks in our everyday lives, even the bicycle, the tricycle, anything made out of metal. Guess where that metal came from? It came from some type of rock that had a metallic mineral in it, okay? Even the refrigerators, the stove. So we depend on the parts of rock that we call minerals in our everyday lives. Even the animals depend on that, little bitty rocks to large rocks. In fact, there are some birds that love to eat. You heard Dr. Gorman talk about gravel. From time to time, gravel is used to make roads or pathways or railway beddings. And you will see birds consuming some of the tiny little bits of gravel, even the grit, and they will deposit it in their gullet, which is called, or the gizzard, and it helps them digest their food. In fact, I've got a little friend I want to show you guys. This is Bessie the quail. Now, quail are known for doing that. If Bessie was out free, she would probably, after eating some seeds and maybe a few little tiny nuts, to help her digest those, she would consume some of them tiny little bits of grit and tiny little bits of gravel to help her digest those things that she had taken in for food. So I'm going to put Bessie back. Now, sea otters, they are a member of the weasel family, and they've been known to use rocks to crack the hard shell of the abalone shells so that they can get food. Isn't that something? And then we have also animals that use rocks for shelter. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so I can show you a challenge. a challenge where you're going to have to make some observations using your eyes. You heard Miss Schramm talk about camouflage. Well, there are a lot of animals that use different rocks for camouflage. So bear with me while I share my screen with you guys, and I'm going to see how observant you guys are. Hang on. Now, not only do animals use rocks to kind of hide in, but sometimes plants will do this. As a warm-up, I want you all to look at this image and see if you can find the different plants that are hiding in these rocks. Give you just a minute. You see them? Well, let's see if you noticed them. Did you see those? And I think there's one other one. Let's see if I can get the arrow to point right there. So that one was kind of missed. All right, let's go to the next one. And this one deals with a snow leopard that is in these mountains, and that snow leopard is peeking over a ledge and he's looking right at you. So see if you can find him. Well, an excellent place for a snow leopard to live, right? Because you see there's a little snow in these cliffs and these rocks, these boulders. So let's see if you guys were able to find him. Whoop, there he is. Let's go to the next one. Well, this one ought to be pretty easy. Remember the lizard that Miss Ramirez showed you? Well, there's a lizard in this picture. See if you can find him. Boy, that's kind of tough there. I think I see his eye. How about you? Have you found him yet? Let's see. Boing, there he is, right there. Ready to go to the next one? This one's really going to be a challenge. You ready? Whoop. You see him? Boy, that's pretty easy. I thought it was going to be a challenge for you guys. But if you start looking for his eyes, guess what? You have found him right there. Well, that's a pretty good challenge. So you can see how these animals have used rocks as a hiding place to be safe. Not only as a hiding place, but a lot of them use rocks as a shelter so that they can be protected from not only other animals that might eat them, but from the elements that we have here on our planet, like rain and wind and snow and storms. Well, guys, I have run out of time now, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give it back to Dr. Gorman in case some of you have some questions that he probably going to be able to answer for you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. My goodness, I had a little trouble finding a couple of those animals. They were doing a pretty good job of camouflaging. But a student sent a question in, are there any rocks that humans eat? I would actually think it right at first, probably not, but I would have been wrong. And you're going to be surprised probably. Salt, which is halite, Halite, is the only rock that is edible for humans. It is 40% sodium and 60% chlorine. It is needed by the human body to regulate fluid balance. So tonight, when you sit down at the dinner table, ask mom or dad to pass you the halite, and they're probably not going to know what you're talking about. Thank you again, Mr. Monroe, for your program. And now I am going to share my screen. During this virtual field trip, students observe and describe rocks by size, shape, color, and texture. Students also give examples of the way the rocks are useful. The types of rocks covered with Mr. Dominguez, Ms. Ramirez, color and texture, Ms. Schramm did size and shape. Mr. Monroe told you how rocks are useful. Thank you for watching. If you would, go to www.tiny.cc/pk-2 feedback, fill out a very short form and send it back to us. We would certainly appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of the day. More importantly, have a great rest of your life.